System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' Inner City Left.
This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Today is Thursday, May 21st. I am Amin TMK alongside Amoja Lotegi Summer. Amoja, hello. Happy Thursday. How are you doing? What's the word on the street? What are the people talking about?
Man, just out here trying to get it. You already know.
Yeah, man, I would like to think me and you have a great friendship. I would even consider I consider us buddies, you know? But I think what's going on between Xi and Putin, that's the next level. That's a real live bromance, and we need to talk about it. As you know, Trump and his billionaire squad, they pulled up to Beijing to speak with President Xi Jinping, and by all accounts, it didn't go well. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that later. But a week later, we get Vladimir Putin and Xi linking up. How about this? Putin and Xi to ink 40 deals in Beijing, extend cooperation treaty. Putin and Xi meet in Beijing to deepen bilateral ties with new deals in energy and AI on the table, and Xi calling for a West Asia ceasefire. 40 deals, man. I don't remember that many deals getting inked when Trump and was Jensen Yang and the whole squad ran up the Billionaire Boys Club. What does this mean right here? The little group squad here.
You're joking, but I mean, it's more serious than that even, right? Like, not only did Jensen not get no deals, but while he was literally there, the Chinese government banned one of NVIDIA's processors that they see as a bit of a security risk, right? They're doing the same thing. They're doing the same thing to Americans that the Americans are doing to them. The same way where right now it's not really possible to do an American contract with the Pentagon if you work with, say, like if you have like Huawei, right? But so much of the world uses Huawei, the Pentagon has to get waivers written all the time, right? That's what we're seeing. And so China is doing to the Americans what the Americans have been doing to them. Oh, okay, well, you're going to ban our technology. We'll ban yours. They only bought, on waiver for they pledged to buy 200 planes from Boeing, far less than what Boeing was expecting. In fact, it was so bad that their stock dropped 4% that day. And yet, meanwhile, Putin comes. Not only are they having incredibly brotherly moments, deals are getting done. This is the Chinese saying, we don't feel like the Americans are going to honor any of their agreements, right? These are the real impacts when you watch a country bomb a country that it's in negotiations with, right? Which the Americans have done over and over again. It makes the rest of the world start to see that the Americans are what they call agreement incapable. Like, no matter what the deal is, whatever you agree to do, ultimately the Americans aren't going to come through. And so they're saying we'd rather risk business with Russians, even though Russia's a much smaller market by GDP, even though, again, by PPP, personal power purchasing, per person purchasing power, Russians are a pretty good market. They share a huge natural land bridge between the two of them, and those countries are just going to be linked forever. They've been linked in history for more than 1,000 years, and it's going to continue, right? Plus, they also have the advantage of both being seen as adversarial nations by the United States of America. America goes to China to get a deal on how to screw over Russia. America goes to Russia to get a deal on how to screw over China. They both recognize it. The president has said several times, we got to unseparate them. Right? When he was crying at Tucker Carlson because that was his bestie back then, they understand what the game is, and they understand that creating dependencies on each other ensures that they'll always be invested. And the thing that we have to acknowledge now is it's almost a certainty that Iran will be invited to this table now. They've demonstrated the ability to defend themselves in a way that really no country in near Asia has been able to do. Syria resisted, and then it fell. Lebanon has been, let's just say, compromised for 40 years. Egypt is incredibly corrupt. The Gulf monarchies only care about money. Saddam fell almost instantly. Iran has done something that no country in that area has been able to do for quite some time. But the thing is, historically, this is what Iran has always done. They were able to resist, and this matters. They were able to resist the Roman Empire for exactly the same reason. You run into logistics trains. Like, at the end of the day, humans need food. They need water. Machines need petroleum. They need maintenance. And the farther away you get them from their base of operations, the worse they're going to do on all of these things. The Romans couldn't work it out. The Americans are finding themselves having much the same problem. And it's just interesting because for so long, the Americans looked at the Iraqis as incompetent in battle because they were somehow not able to defeat the weak, sanctioned Iran. But now the United States are there. And they're having the exact same problems that everyone has when you attack Iran.
I was trying to get to this a little bit earlier, but I didn't want to spoil it too much. So this is Putin talking to Xi. I'll try to read it in the background so our lovely and wonderful podcast listeners can hear, since most of them probably don't speak Russian. Mr. President Xi Jinping, dear friend, it will be appropriate to use a Chinese saying. As you know, in China, they say, I haven't seen you for a day, but as if 3 autumns passed. We are really very happy to see you. We check our watch, both personally and through our assistants. And through Parliament, I warmly recall last year celebrating the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Second World War. So you can already tell this is sort of because relationships still matter, and these things still come to fruition on the world stage. And a little bit earlier today, they asked, I believe Trump was getting asked. I'll see if I can find the video. But they kind of asked him, like, how did you feel about, I think here it is right here. I'm just going to let Trump say it because people are, these men want to be seen as great leaders of the world and, great leaders that move other people.
Both of them. But I think it's good. I don't know if the ceremony is quite as brilliant as mine. I watched. I think we topped them. Good team. But no, I get along with Putin. I get along with everybody but your husband and a few others.
On the Iran deal, would you be open to eliminating?
So he's already talking about, no, it wasn't as good as mine. Mine was way better.
I mean, and this is what a narcissist does, right? Like, understand, at the end of the day, Trump has to be the salesman because that's what the president of the United States in many ways is. But he understands that the Russians are his competitors. He understands that they're adversarial to the Chinese, and yet still he wants to be Xi's best friend. He wants to be Putin's best friend. Remember, he went to North Korea. He wanted to be Kim's best friend, right? This ain't about friendship, but the narcissist has to believe that even though my role in life is actually to fuck you and your people over in the most magnificent way possible, up to and including taking your life if I have to, I don't mean you should be mad at me about it. It's just my job. It's not part. Like, to him, this is like rational thought. You know what I'm saying? Like, any Trump speech where he's on the stump. I mean, dear God, he sounds like he's straight out of Deadwood when he starts talking about Chinese people, But now he's in China, I get along with Xi, You say so.
And this is just the ridiculousness of the way politics work. And again, I don't understand sort of what the outcomes people expect when we go to your country specifically, like you said, to destabilize your currency, to sell you a bill of bad goods, to open up trade so we can make money and get rare earth minerals to then fight you with it. That just can't happen. And Russia and China were not always the bestest of friends, but because they share a common enemy, I think that's pretty clear right now. You bring people together, and the United States has a great way of doing that in that regard. We'll keep you updated. I know you mentioned when we talked about NVIDIA and them sort of losing the chip race to maybe sell to China, and China's kind of like, we're going to handle it ourselves.
It's not even so much when you talk about people use this term 5D chess, right? And I think it's stupid as hell because most people can't even.
First of all, chess is already pretty difficult, right?
You know what I'm saying? We don't have to add extra. China really does play 5D chess with NVIDIA. So there are Chinese corporations that are also trying to make the microprocessors that NVIDIA makes. Every time they buy NVIDIA, it's not just $1 to NVIDIA. It's $1 away from their own native Chinese microprocessor companies. Buying NVIDIA just because they're the best chips in the world may help you today, but it hurts you tomorrow because your chip manufacturers will always be a generation behind, and that creates a dependency too. If the Americans were smarter, they would have exploited this, made sure that no technological achievements could be even possible through China, except but through American technology. Instead, once again, the xenophobia, they're reverse engineering all of our tech, right? They're just stealing our tech.
They make all our stuff, and they stole how to make our stuff by making our stuff. Right. That's how people sound.
And so, you're in a place now where China realizes you want to get them hooked on the crack for free. Yeah, a little bit. They're like, nah, we good, because they understand they're doing what they can to remove dependencies as well. Why is that happening? Because both of these countries understand that conflict is inevitable. This is why the Chinese are talking about things like the Thucydides trap to Trump, right? What you're talking about is the theory that when one empire rises, it can only come to the detriment of another one, right? This goes back to the city-states of Athens and Sparta. And Sparta's looking at Athens and they're like, oh, they're coming after our empire, right? And so there's a history, right, for these empires to clash. The Persians clashed with the old Persian army, clashed with Alexander the Great's invading army, right? You have the Gallic armies, going up against the Romans and declining empire, right? The Goths and the Visigoths. You get that over and over through history. You get the old Spanish Empire going up against the young British Empire. And it changes the world. And when we're talking about the state of military, cutting edge nuclear and military tech, the stuff that nobody's seen, the stuff that the Americans haven't used anywhere, the stuff that the Chinese haven't used, the stuff that the Russians haven't used. We don't want to get to the point where they have to do these things. Russia's getting to the point now where they're showing the weapons that they've been saving for a long time as a little bit more of a warning. Oh, this is the conventional kinetic. This is the conventional kinetic. There's an upgrade.
Have things in house.
You
right. Keep things. It's kind of like the parts. So you want to be able to manufacture your parts. You want to be able to have replacements whenever you need them, and you want to be able to continue to advance your own technology and not need the technology from others. And I think China understands that, and they also know that they can't lend a lifeline to the United States. We always joke about this, or there is a joke within the community is oh, how does China win? Sit back and do nothing. And that's sort of what their vibe has been. Of course, they're doing quite a lot, but in terms of, their purchasing of American goods that they can find other places, they don't. And again, the strategic placements and purchases of oil, in Venezuela, that was a big problem for the United States. That's why they had to go in and get Maduro, abduct him and his wife, which still in a New York prison.
But at the end of the day, right, and this goes back to your greater question at large, Russia was always a far more important petroleum, supplier to China. And that goes back to those 40 agreements that are made, right? Because who can they count on not to get squeezed? Who can they count on not to betray them? Because their very life depends on it too, the Russians. So they have technology trade between them. They have raw petrochemical. They have, dual use tech that can go from China, that can have number of different utilizations in Russia, right? They have a manufacturing base that they can count on. Whatever the Russians need to buy, they are the for real Walmart, right? In a non-dismissive sort of way. Whatever your country needs to build, whatever it needs, we got it. That's the relationship China and Russia have right now, up to and including. You need lines of credit. We got you. If there's nobody you can count on right now. In many ways, this is exactly when you talk about the lack of skill of contemporary American presidents, this is literally what Nixon worked to destroy, right? He saw the Sino Russia split, and he utilized that to bring the Chinese government more into the orbit of the Americans. He gave up on the Taiwanese. The Taiwanese question was dead the moment Nixon opened conversation with China to pull them away from the Russians. But they offered them real things. The Americans don't even offer real things anymore. China can't be tricked in that way. They understand their destiny lies with Russia, and Russia understands literally their survival depends on China. Nothing can break that right now.
Yeah, great point. Let's pivot on to another big story today. And again, we've been trying to keep you guys updated on Cuba as much as possible. Today, Raul Castro, former president of Cuba, there was an indictment earlier today, on him or by I can't remember who it was. I thought I had it loaded up here, but. It's kind of one of those things. Again, let's not forget the United States killed the Ayatollah Khomeini in his home with his granddaughter next to him. So this is sort of, I guess, they're on, we already mentioned that they abducted Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro and his wife. So this is just what they do. This is who they are as people, who they are as a government. And I have two videos here. Did you want to say something first before I jump in? Oh, okay. What do you want? Should I give you the serious one or should we go with the salacious one first? When do you want to start?
Let's go salacious. Right, we need laughs in this world. Let's get it.
Yes. We are always so dreary with our politics. We're fun guys. I promise. We're fun guys. Okay. This is a little bit earlier. This is Senator John Kennedy. I don't quite know if he's linked, how linked he is. Republican from Louisiana.
And number two, Fidel Castro, the original Castro, was pretty smart. He was evil, but he was smart. But these asshats since then have just been incompetent. They're like three-wheel shopping carts. I mean, they're just incompetent. All they know how to do is oppress people. They take all their money and they give it to the military and the police and themselves. And to hell with the good people of Cuba. And that's not a model for success. And they're gone. And they just don't know it yet, whether we do it through an invasion or not. I'd rather do it the easy way, but that's kind of up to the communists who are running things.
What's the easy way?
What's the easy way? What's the easy way? Yo, man, the irony. I mean, you know what I'm saying? What can you even say about that? Every accusation is a confession. Who, when is the last time Cuba invaded a country? You gotta go back to like the 60s when they were brought at the invitation of the African freedom movement in Angola, like fighting literal segregationists. You can't make this shit up, man. Cuba goes around the world with their doctors curing people. You know what I'm saying? When the COVID pandemic was at its highest level of notoriety, this country that has been blockaded by the Americans for 50 plus years sent their best and their brightest around the world to take care of people, to help them have access to health care. This is a country that is and had breakthroughs in the medical industry. They pioneered a lung cancer vaccine. You can't explain to Americans how violent American foreign policy is. This is not something that changes between Democrats and Republicans. I mean, you have Democrats, again, attacking Trump from the right about his performance in Iran and his performance in Venezuela. There is no anti-war movement in America. And for an American politician to say that all the country does is give the money to the police and to loot the money themselves and to send it to the military, when the president himself said less than a week ago, I don't care about the financial obligations of any Americans.
All these people know how to do is oppress. They take all the money and give it to the police and the military. Wow. I mean, wow.
Don't defund the police.
Unbelievable.
Fund them.
To say that.
Fund them.
Because, again, if there is any country that does that, all they know how to do is oppress, take their money and give it to the police and the military. The United States is the number one answer on the board. And of course, he has all their asshats. Why are you? You are a senator, man.
The president is taking away the prohibition on cursing, and that's why again, right? We get demonetized on YouTube, you know, because we let loose the language of the people. But the president of the United States of America, you know, can go on.
It's just like, this is a person that is supposed to be representative of your government, and you trying to go over there and shake hands and everything, you know, or I guess they're not talking about, you know, going to Cuba and shaking hands, but you can't speak about leaders in this way. Again, it just makes you look ridiculous. And in the world where a lot of people are trying to run their politics in a professional manner, we got people saying assets. Okay. I got another thing. You've been mentioning Marco Rubio, and, you know, he's the one that's kind of collecting the wins. This was him earlier today, speaking on Cuba and obviously Raul Castro.
Ambassadors met with him recently. The CIA director was down there a few weeks ago. There's some State Department communications that occur. I just don't see a lot of, at the end of the day, they got to make a decision. Their system doesn't work, right? Their economic system does not work. It's broken. And you can't fix it with the current political system that's in place. They just don't comprehend how to do it. And it's a failed state. Like, their economy and the model they're trying to follow in Cuba doesn't resemble what anyone is doing anywhere in the world. I mean, there are other ways to do it that can provide the people of Cuba prosperity and opportunity. And it's what I said in the video to them the other day. You look at Cuba, in the Bahamas, in Jamaica, in the Dominican Republic, here in Florida. Cuba's surrounded by places where people have the right to do things like own a business, work for themselves, and be able to vote and for the leaders that govern them and or replace them. So if that's possible all around Cuba, why isn't it possible? Why is that not possible inside of Cuba? And right now, there just doesn't seem to be people over there in charge of the regime who are in any way open to any of those changes. And the things they talk about economically are cosmetic in nature. They're not real, because that's what they've gotten used to all these years, is just buying time and waiting us out. They're not going to be able to wait us out or buy time. We're very serious. We're very focused. As I told you a moment ago, in the context of Iran, The president's preference is always a negotiated agreement that's peaceful. That's always our preference. That remains our preference with Cuba. I'm just being honest with you. The likelihood of that happening, given who we're dealing with right now, is not high. But if they have a change of heart, we're here. And in the meantime, we'll keep doing what we need to do.
I mean, there is no word that you have for a man that's willing to kill his own people for personal ambition. I don't have a word for that. I really don't. I try not to apply morality to people in power, because power is, and power is beyond morality, and that's just the truth. That's just a geopolitical truth. And you're not going to get very far if you're like, oh, there's a good person, there's a bad person. You have to look at, is this an effective person? Marco Rubio is an incredibly effective person. He's far more capable than Pete Hegseth. He pretty much has the entire Central America and South America. I mean, the fact that he has the CIA director down there meeting with their government, I mean, win or lose, that's already a win. It shows you the amount of pressure that they're under. But again, it goes back to how Americans are able to create the record, how they're able to distort the truth. It's not that Cuba's economic system doesn't work. It's that you will be at the very least under American sanctions if you do business with Cuba. At worst, you will be fired on by the American military if you try to go to Cuba. Who's going to do that? If you tell Mexico, right, you can do business with Cuba or you can do business with us, economically, who do you choose? You have to choose the United States. It's a far bigger market, And so you've at best coerced all of these other nations into not doing business with them. Thousands of babies die in Cuba every year, even with one of the best medical industries in the world, simply because of American sanctions. That is just the truth. That does not change whether you're talking about a Democrat or a Republican. Marco Rubio is a descendant of Cubans, and he is totally okay doing this to the people that he derived from. What does that make you think he is capable of doing? That should let you know he's capable of anything. This is his test for power. This is his moment. And he is succeeding.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he's delivering the least belligerent of the speeches when it comes to sort of the Trump administration. And, obviously the difference between Cuba and the Dominican Republic and Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica is they do not have a blockade of the world's grandest naval fleet around them.
But I would also ask, what is the percentage of business ownership in Trinidad and Tobago and in Jamaica? So it ain't no mom and pops, It's just like how Cuba used to be. You got a bunch of the people that work at these resorts that can't even stay at these resorts. So, your country is Disneyland and your people exist to serve the tourists. What kind of destiny is that?
Yeah, and I think you saw a lot of that when it came to sort of the way that those Caribbean countries' politicians were reacting to the violence in Venezuela and the fishermen that were from different countries in the Caribbean as well. And to try to move forward like, oh, the Cubans, they're just crazy people. Don't understand? No one runs and it's so they still are using this Cold War rhetoric about communism. He didn't say communism, but he's saying no one in the world runs a government like them. And if it's so destined to fail, why do you need to continue to blockade them? And why do you need to continue to try to destabilize their country? Donald Trump earlier today said they have people in Cuba right now. So why do you find the need to destabilize a country that's already ready to collapse? And why do you feel the need to completely blockade them for several decades? I'm going on close to half a century at this point.
And I find it ironic that the Americans have the audacity to bring up human relations, like human rights violations at Cuba. Of all places on earth, Cuba, The place where Guantanamo Bay exists that's still not closed.
Yeah,
with
that's
all
the
of
biggest
its
human
history
rights violation. Oh, but
that
that's
happened on the
America's
entire
base.
island. So, like, again, every accusation is a confession.
Yeah, and it's just what they do. And one last thing, because I think we should talk about this before we wrap up, is not only this is not just rhetoric. This is not just Raul Castro. This is the island is under the same pressure that Venezuela was. These fleets are out there waiting. You mentioned the current president in Cuba. We talked about this last episode. Said it would be a bloodbath if the United States sends troops to the island, but that could be a possibility. So, you know, what do you see kind of happening in, you know, going forward in Cuba? And, you know, what do you know about sort of the fleet that is surrounding Cuba at the moment?
My strong belief is Cuba has one advantage going for them, which was the original advantage they had in the Cuban Revolution. This is an entire population of people that believe wholeheartedly in being Cuban. They believe in what that means as an identity. You know, that's the same strength that the Iranians have. No matter what problems they may or may not have with their government, they love Iran. No matter what problems they may or may not have with their government, Cubans love Cuba and they understand what it is to be colonized. You have an entire population that, even though logistically they have a lot of disadvantages, you have a tropical island that's mountainous. I see guerrilla fighting. I've been wrong before. I just don't see a Venezuela in their future. I just don't. I don't think that their people will. I don't think their leadership will betray their people in that way. And I think if the leadership stays strong, I think the people will stay strong as long as because they see themselves in the government. You know what I'm saying? The people that are still in Cuba, that's what they see. Or else they would have left. Like, the motherfuckers is not with this shit. Is all in fucking, you know, it's Ted Cruz. You know, it's Marco Rubio. They left. It's Jorge Masvidal. You know, it's just like the Venezuelan expats. The people that are there.
Iranian expats, same thing.
Right.
And the list
goes on. The people
on.
that are there, they still with the shits. You know, and whatever they are, they want to be Cuban. And there's no way they can be Cuban. And what that means to them as a sense of national identity, that whole 51st state Venezuela shit, that's not Cuba. They're not going to let that happen. No matter how much affinity they have for American culture, I think the entire island will lock down. And I think it has the potential to be a Vietnam. I really do. I don't see... and you're going to lose the plot on it quick because America cannot sustain an attritional war. Every piece of armament right now needs to be used on Iran, needs to be used, you know, on China, needs to be used for Russia, right? Cuba is a luxury and they want it, you know, the president is a hassa. You know, he wants to be, I think I'll be the one that'll be honored he wants the honor of conquest. He can't, that's why it's ridiculous to me that people pretend on any type of level that he's anti-war. He's anti-losses. He doesn't want to see American soldiers die. And to the extent that he can keep that number low, artificially or otherwise, he will. But the longer a conflict goes on, the longer a conflict is a high conflict. And again, as we've told you on Inner City Left once, twice, a million times, an aerial campaign is not war. War is boots on the ground. Boots on the ground is losses on both sides. Yeah. It's just the history of you shoot at me and I shoot at you. It just doesn't change that much in history.
And you've brought a tremendous amount of hardship to Cuba for so long. I mean, again, I talk about this when it comes to the war in Ukraine and the military that the Russians have and the culture that they have for fighting for their nation and their homeland. Why do you want to go to war with these people? We say the same things in Iran. This is an ancient culture, thousands of years old. They're very sophisticated people. Why do you want to go to war with these people? China, that's another one. Is military advancements.
See, Cuba's not that.
advancements.
Cuba's not thousands of years old, but it has a very strong identity.
But who was the bodyguard? The bodyguards made up for in the presidential palace for the Venezuelans.
Absolutely.
Who were they?
Communist Cubans.
They were Cubans. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a country of Cubans.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I mean. Of course, they don't have the same technological advancements, but they are a culture of revolution, communism, and resistance. Yeah. And let's not forget Bay of Pigs. I don't know how that is viewed in Cuba, and I'm sure it's a point of pride again, but this is not the first rodeo for them. And I can imagine if you're growing up a Cuban, you're very aware of what the United States is trying to do to destabilize your nation.
Yeah. And again, this is a bluff. Right? Because remember, if it's coming from Rubio, it's a bluff. If it's coming from Hegseth, it's a promise. Because he brings the power and the might of the American military with his threats. Right? Rubio carries trickery that he works through the intelligence agencies and all of the power that the Department of State has, which are quite formidable. But at the end of the day, it's a different type of power projection. It's a bluff, but it's a bluff they'll be obligated to follow through on, right? And when it goes that way, Rubio won't have much say over it until it's done. It'll go back to Hegseth. You got to remember their own little thing between the two of them. These are the inefficiencies that sometimes create obstacles within the administration to being able to make through. The thing that Rubio needs the most, he needs a Delcy. That's what his call was, a cry for help for the Delcy. Who's the person that's going to make a big, strong move, sell out the government? We got opportunities. We got jobs. That's his cry for help. If it doesn't happen, it's going to go the other way. And, we'll see how that goes. The United States military has other obligations. And they will be fighting, I believe, a quite fanatical enemy. Even if they have a technological advantage, win on death ground fight, that's Sun Tzu. So who can call it?
Yeah, let's give a shout out to our podcast listeners. We're available everywhere you find podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Pocket Cast. Podbean site is always available. Fables, Foibles, Other American Sins, link in the description. Patreon.com/InnerCityLeft. We love you guys like cook food. You're the real heroes. Amin TMK, everywhere you find music. Lil Tanky, everywhere you find music. Instagram, IG, Inner City Left, InnerCityLeft.com. Lots more things on the way. Hopefully, this year, of course, has been good to us, and we want to continue to grow this channel, hit 1,000 subscribers. Proud of you guys. Thank each subscriber. We want to keep those numbers going up because we feel like the news that we're bringing, only Inner City Left can bring you this kind of news with this kind of context. There's a lot of great places out there, but when it comes to geopolitics, when it comes to the inner city left, when it comes to the black and brown people, when it comes to Palestinians, when it comes to the poor people, this is a different type of leftism than you might normally see. And that's why we think that we're important. And of course, just another part of a lovely and budding and wonderful leftist community as we push back against
working
hegemony
on a fraction of the $87,911,545,000 that we have expended so far in the Iranian escapade.
Getting close to 100 billion, man.
Could have solved a lot of problems.
Don't tell me you don't have no money for this. It's just so ridiculous. Anyway, I just don't know what more to say. I think we can end it on that. For Amoja, Lil Tanky Summer, I'm Amin TMK. This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Peace.
System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' Inner City Left.